And actually, we're going to stay along that same theme, except this time the question is going to go to Ms. Marsala. And Ms. Marsala, this is the question. As Dr. Kirk just alluded to, you actually served on the state task force that's been considering what value-added measures will be used in the new state teacher evaluation system. And just from your own point of view, can you explain what those measures are, and maybe more to the point, why they were chosen?
Like Dr. Kirk said, I mean, I have been on the state task force since it started. We actually started meeting last February, and I don't think I've sat in math statistics classes like that since I was in college. And there was literally day after day of looking at graphs and charts and statistical analysis. We went into it, and the state had hired a group called AIR, which stands for the American Institutes for Research. And they were the ones that were going to put together the actual statistical model. And what they did is they brought the group, which was from all over the state. It had parents, it had teachers, it had administrators, it had school board members on this. And we were given 8 different models to first look at. And when we broke it down, we started looking, and the teachers were highly vocal about what would be good and what wouldn't be good for teachers and looking at the different models. And in a much earlier than anticipated vote, unanimously, the entire group voted for the covariate adjustment model, which doesn't mean a whole lot, but here's what it essentially means to us. We decided that we're not going to be looking at necessarily always where should the kid be? Why aren't they doing where they should be? We're looking at what has the student always done in the past. Everything is looking at how has that, and they're not comparing students against students, which some models were doing. This model is going to take each individual student, look at where they've been and where they should be going. And then they're going to adjust for certain variables. Now, according to the Senate bill, there's certain variables that no matter what, we're not allowed to be selected. And that is anything to do with race or socioeconomics. So when people say, oh, that's free and reduced lunch students, no, that's socioeconomic. We were not allowed. That's a stipulation in the Senate bill. And again, we have all the students with disabilities. We have ELL students. We have things in there for attendance rates for teachers. Because, I'm a teacher. Am I going to be held accountable for someone who's in my class for a week because they were in my class during FCAT? Attendance is something that's going to be taken into consideration in this as well. And I think the biggest thing to remember, and this is what they kind of drove home, which, we did include these values to be added to make sure that teachers got maybe points or points were taken into consideration for all the students you teach that have all these labels. But if you're comparing that student to themselves and how they've always been, then a lot of times it's already taken into consideration was the initial argument as to why we might not need to do it. But the group still felt very strongly that we had to make sure we had as many variables as could possibly be added in this for the teachers. The statistical model, it came out. I can tell you honestly, as a teacher, I teach social studies, so I'm not one of the FCAT subjects, even though I do a lot of reading and writing. But they came out this year. The counties now has to look at that and determine how to use those scores. Because the state's got data from the past 3 years on all teachers. So they're looking at the past 3 years. Nothing's ever going to be a 1 year end-all be-all. It's always going to be through 3 years. And the whole point is to find what is the teacher effect? What effect is the teacher having on what the student should be doing naturally on their own when it comes to learning is how they look at it. And they want to try to see this teacher effect. If you're a teacher out there, I spoke to one of the guys one morning and I was asking him about it, and I said, well, how many teachers can really get highly effective? How many teachers can really be at the lowest according to this? And statistically speaking, 10% of the teachers are going to be at the very high. 10% are going to be at the very low. And everyone else is going to fall into that just above, just below the median, all over in that area. So it's not going to be a gotcha for teachers, because believe me, every teacher on that committee wanted to make sure it's not a gotcha on teachers. All right, I'm good.
You're good? Thank you for your insight. We appreciate it. Our next question is going to go to Ms. Zalamia. And the question is this: from the perspective of the teachers union, What needs to be included in any teacher evaluation system that fairly and accurately measures a teacher's effectiveness? And the follow-up to that would be, what resources need to be in place to attract and keep the best teachers?
Thank you. Any evaluation system has to have the 3 T's. It has to be tried, tested, and trusted. It has to be trusted. The people that are being evaluated by that measurement system have to trust the evaluation measurement. There also has to be widespread buy-in and ownership. And by that I mean widespread, from the top to the bottom, or from the bottom to the top. And it has to be clear, concise, and easy to understand. But after listening to Nicole, I'm not sure how clear, concise, and easy to understand it is. Mostly, in order for any kind of evaluation system to work, it has to be sustainable. And by that, I mean it has to be adequately funded. The state of Florida has had other pilot programs in performance and merit pay, and they've gone away. We need to look at those systems. Why didn't they work? And part of that was there was no funding. It has to be meaningful. An evaluation system has to be meaningful. If you're going to purport to actually reward high-performing teachers, then you better have some money to reward them. More to the point, there's too much emphasis on the FCAT. 50% of a teacher's evaluation is based on the FCAT, and that is mandated by law. We feel that that's entirely too much. There should be other factors taken into account: the student's body of work, student engagement, and again, 50% is just too high. The other thing that's important in any evaluation system is consistent and regular mentor and peer observations. There has to be a consistency. It can't, like you said earlier, Nicole, it can't just be go into the classroom for 30 minutes and based on that. It has to be consistent. Most importantly, for an evaluation system to be fair and accurate, there has to be a perception that it is fair and accurate. And in order for that perception to exist, there has to be a high respect for the teaching profession. And this, you mentioned that earlier. As long as teachers are not highly valued, given autonomy and authority, some of our teachers aren't even allowed to go to the bathroom these days, and allowed for creativity in the classroom, no measurement is going to be fully accepted, and there will not be ownership. So I think those are the big issues. You've got to have ownership, and you've got to have sustainable, adequate funding. As far as the resources go, again, we're talking about resources. Many teachers are buying their own supplies for kids. How many of you buy your own supplies for kids? Folks, that's not adequate resource. We have to have good leadership. And once again, like Finland, in Finland, it is more difficult to get into a school of education to become a teacher than it is to be a doctor or a lawyer. We have to highly respect these teachers and value them, and then the systems will work out for themselves.
Thank you for that. Now we're going to actually go right back to Ms. Marsala again, who looks just thrilled with more questions. This is the question for you right now. As a teacher, what is it that motivates most teachers to be successful, in your opinion? And what resources and incentives do teachers need to be highly effective at their position?
This is my opinion, just clear. I personally think anybody who's a teacher is in it to be successful. No one's going to go into any job and not want to be successful. And teachers are there to help students. Every single teacher wants to move their students, wants their students to do well. That's a successful teacher. Yeah, resources are great, resources are nice. We would all love to have, those smart classrooms with all the doodads. But, if you don't, as long as you have a teacher that cares and is willing to do the extra work, which most teachers are when they're there at 6, 7 at night, or 7 in the morning, and school doesn't start till 9, they're willing to do all that extra effort it takes to be successful. So, I don't know if there's one thing that motivates teachers. It's no different than those students that want to do well. It's an intrinsic motivation that just gets you into this field and wants you always to succeed, to be the best that you can.
Thank you.